internet. Also, the meeting will be recorded. It will assist the conduct of business if participants speak only when invited. I shall adjourn the meeting if necessary if protocol is not observed. Members of the public are welcome to view the proceedings but should not make contributions during the decision-making process. All members of the committee have received the reports in advance and had the opportunity to read them. The reports are published on the internet. Additional documents, known as the pre-committee notes, are available on the Council's internet site and have been emailed to members and public speakers. These should be read in conjunction with the main agenda documents. They are fully taken into account before decisions are made. Applications will be dealt with in the order they appear on the agenda, and I will invite applicants, agents and public speakers who have registered to speak at the appropriate time. All speakers must ensure that they do not overrun their 3-minute time limit. There will be no questioning by the committee of objectors, supporters, applicants or agents who will not be able to speak again. All participants should mute their microphones and video feed when they are not speaking. Please remember to unmute your microphone and switch on your video feed when it is your turn to speak. Speak clearly and slowly into your microphone. The chat function on Microsoft Teams should only be used by members of the committee and officers. This is to assist me with the conduct of the meeting. Members of the public should not use this function in any capacity. This is being monitored and has a full audit trail. Anyone found to be using this function will be removed from the meeting. If there are registered speakers on an application, the officers will present the report. Registered speakers will be invited to make representations one at a time, and members of the committee will be asked if they want to speak on the application. The committee will then be invited to make a decision on each individual application. When a matter is put to a formal vote, I will ask each member of the committee individually to record their vote. Finally, I ask for everyone's patience with the use of the technology. I apologise in advance if we experience any unforeseen circumstances, difficulties, which we shall try to resolve expediently. When the item on which you have contributed is concluded, you may leave the meeting by using the red hang up button if you wish. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, Councillors Ahmed and Kell.
And substitutes?
Yes, Councillor Muggle for Councillor Ahmed, Chair.
Chair, we have another sub for Councillor Kell. Sorry. Councillor Ahmed will be subbing for Councillor Kell.
It's Councillor Crested Ahmed I'll be subbing, and it's apologies from Councillor Asif Ahmed. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And are there any declarations of interest under the Members' Code of Conduct? Take that as none. And can I confirm and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of February 2021 as a correct record?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yes, Chair.
So moving on to the first item on the agenda this evening, which is planning application P200587. Pete, would you like to come in on that one, please?
Yes, certainly, Chair. If we could go to the first slide, please. Okay, this application is for the erection of 2 3-bedroom detached bungalows with a pair of garages and frontage parking. On the garage site, you can see in the middle of the slide in front of you, the garage course is located towards the end of Bellevue, where it has a footpath that extinguishes just to the south of the site. Immediately to the south of the site, there is a public right-of-way which runs down steps onto birch coppice, and the site generally residential area, but in a very hilly area. So effectively, what you've got is immediately to the rear of the garage site is a slope down to the rear gardens of dwellings on birch coppice that face the site. You'll note that just to the north of the site is a 15 Bellevue. That's a detached 2-story dwelling. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is the location plan. Probably doesn't tell you as much as the aerial view did, so we can move on with that one, please. And this is the proposed layout of the site. 2 detached bungalows with garages in between, parking between the 2 properties, and with a footpath along the whole of the frontage, such that it links to the public right of way at the south of the site. Okay. Indication of the garages that will be provided for the properties. So there's 200% car parking, including the garage. Next one, please. And this is an indication of the appearance of the bungalows. So windows to front and rear. The bungalows approximately 5.5 meters in height. They have a 35 degree pitch roof, and that's to enable the use of clay tiles that are generally seen in the vicinity of the developments. It needs to be a minimum of that pitch to have those materials on the roof. Okay, the next slide, please. Okay, so the view from the rear of the site, overlooking onto the properties in birch coppice at the lower level. There's quite an overgrown bank that you can see, and there's a slope that slopes quite steeply down to the rear gardens at the lower level. And the next. Okay, again, view from different garage, but same kind of perspective, looking down. Properties at at birch coppice, approximately 5 or 6 meters lower level to the properties, and there's a separation distance of some 27 meters proposed between the proposed bungalows and the rear of the properties on birch coppice. The next one, please. Again, a view, the bank, quite steep, some overgrowth has been cut away in this slide. There is an earlier slide that will show it where there's more greenery on the site. One of the main elements of this development will be the fact that there will have to be retaining structures to accommodate developments and I suppose provide a stable platform for the development. There is an existing retaining wall at the bottom of the slope that then stands at the level which is the same level of the rear gardens. That is actually leaning. It's not in a great state of repair, but that issue will be addressed as part of the overall development of this site. Okay, next slide, please. So this is a view of the garages and the street scene generally in the vicinity of the site, within 100 yards or so. All of the properties appear to have off-street car parking. So the garages, which information from the applicant's son indicates that 7 are used for car parking, 5 are currently used for storage, and 3 are vacant. And 2 of those have been vacant for approximately 5 or 6 years. Okay, next slide, please. Again, showing the property at 15, detached 2-story house in a similar juxtaposition that the bungalows would be overlooking the properties on Birch Coppice. Next slide, please. This is the top of the public right of way that runs down to Birch Coppice. Again, there is a, I suppose, less than substantial retaining wall that retains the garages. As this is next to a public right of way, there is a condition attached to the proposed approval at condition number 27 that requires details and to be submitted of retaining structures adjacent to the public right of way to ensure that any development that goes on the site will be safe and developed appropriately. Next slide, please. This is a view of that, a better view of that public right of way. You can see that there is a stepped path that goes, I suppose, down to a ramped path at the rear of the application site. You can see the existing retaining wall, and below the retaining wall there's then concrete panel fences that surround the right of way. Okay, next slide, please. And a broader view of the garage site. You can see there's no public footpath outside the garage site as things stand, and you can see the frontages of dwellings which do have off-street car parking available. Sure, if we have a further slide. Yeah. So this shows generally the frontages of the properties on Bellevue Road. They're set back quite significantly from the road frontage. Okay, we have the next one, and that's a wider view taken earlier on in the course of the application, summer of last year, where the vegetation at the rear of the site hadn't been cut back, and you can see the relationship in terms of levels of the site and the houses at the lower level. What I would say is that there are conditions on the proposed, well, on the report, proposed to require the provision of boundary fencing, screen fencing, such that there would be no direct overlooking of properties at the lower level. Given that these are bungalows, that can be achieved, and it's, I suppose, an improved relationship in comparison to the two-storey house directly adjacent to the site. We've also got, in terms of other conditions, we have a condition requiring means of access. That gives a hook on levels, so we'll know exactly what level the bungalows will go in at, and then we can actually seek appropriately means of boundary fencing to prevent overlooking. I would draw members' attention to the pre-committee notes, which have been circulated previously. The pre-committee note relates to photographs that have been submitted by the objector that will be speaking on behalf of a local residents association. So there's additional images shown on those slides, I think comparable to the ones that you've seen in this presentation. And there's also the background correspondence that I'm sure members will have read before the meeting. So recommendation is for approval, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Can I call on our first speaker this evening, Councillor Cottrell, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm speaking obviously to object to this planning application. As you could probably appreciate, having represented the ward now for 22 years, I know this site very well indeed. And obviously I'm no geologist, and I did pass comment on the makeup of the land when we had a site meeting with the residents last year. I thought it was sort of like a made-up bank, but obviously the coal authority seem to be happy. They've withdrawn their concerns about it, so they are happy from that point of view. However, in my opinion, and my humble opinion, I'm no builder, I'm no, but I honestly talk about getting a £1/4 bottle, to say the least. It's the piece of ground is just simply not suitable in my. It's not large enough for the 2 bungalows that are going there, and it only makes possible to be built upon by a retaining wall. It's got to be retaining land, which in itself I think is a problem and could be a problem. And a problem certainly for the outlook of the people from Birch Coppice. Just putting a wall in from, yes, Birch Coppice, just putting a wall right in front of them, and that's now all they've got to look out at. As I say, before members put their hands upon this, I really do recommend that you look at it in detail, because it's alleged, it's made up, it's got to be made up land, it's a bank, and it's got to be retained, and that's the only thing that makes it that you can build upon it. But I think it's quite unsuitable, and I would recommend highly the members, before they vote on it, they have a look at it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cottrell. Can I now call on Sarah Hatfield to speak, please?
I am representing the views and opinions of the Birch Coppice Residents Group. Can I just first say to Councillor Cottrell, thank you for your support, Brian, very much appreciated as always. Okay, so the points we'd like to raise to you this evening are the inaccuracy of the proposal. Some of the dimensions and measurements in the proposal are incorrect. As Brian said, the plot is very small. Many of the garages are in use by car owners, and demolition of these garages will increase the parking pressures. Also, the loss of privacy and light. Presumably, the 3 council officers who have recommended this approval, and yourselves, councillors, if you were to approve the scheme, would be happy to have domestic properties built very near to and above you on made-up land that will fall into their gardens when building work commences. To say nothing of having a view like Alcatraz, looking out on the Gabian rock cages, which is proposed to be the retaining wall. Also, paragraph 31 of the report is wrong with regards to the proposal having no harmful impact on our outlook, privacy and light. Firstly, the bungalows seem excessively high at nearly 6 metres tall, and this would impact on our outlook and light. And a further concern for us is that at a later date, under the permitted development rights, this could be used to smuggle in dormer windows, further impacting on our privacy. Secondly, unless the council intends to stipulate that the proposed dwellings be occupied by partially sighted or registered blind individuals, how can there possibly be no impact on the residents' privacy? Stability of the land. The bank that joins the existing garages to the residents' gardens is on the move. That's why the 7-foot fence has moved. That's why the retaining wall is progressively gravitating towards us. Please have a look at the photographs that we've provided. I know, Peter, you've given photos on there as well, but they do show how the fence is moving. And I notice you've commented on the safety of the public. How about our safety? Councillors, before a decision is made regarding this scheme, we would like the panel to consider all of the points that we have raised as a group and all of our photographic evidence. In addition, we would like to know why the previous planning application was refused. We urge the panel to reject this proposal, to support your own in-borough residents, and to enable us to live in peace with our privacy, light and well-being not being compromised. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Hatfield. Pete, would you like to come back in on the paragraph 31, the no harmful impact and the inaccuracy and incorrect plans, please?
Okay. Well, as far as inaccuracy, we're happy that the size of the dwellings, the size of the footpaths, the size of the parking areas, and the distance separation from the residence is satisfactory, is appropriate. We think the development can be accommodated within the site. Paragraph 31 is really the assessment of the case officer, and it's referring to the distance separation between the properties being in excess of our minimum requirements, and we would require them to be more than our minimum requirements anyway, given the difference in height between the sites. However, these are bungalows. They will only give outlook from the ground floor. We've taken away, or if it's approved, there's a condition that removes permitted development rights to put openings in the roof space. So that would preclude any future overlooking from the roof space. So we're only talking about screening views from ground floor, which we think can be achieved, and that I spoke about in terms of the conditions also attached. In terms of car ownership, well, said that 7 of the garages are used by car owners and 5 are used for storage. We've seen that off-street parking is available in the certainly in the vicinity of the site. Properties have very deep front gardens that can accommodate that. So probably parking comes from people further afield, likely than the immediate local area. In terms of the Gabian structures, these are a commonly used form of retaining wall. It may be that, it may not be. Gabians are stone-filled baskets that can be stacked up. They can also be subject to planting, and there is a planting condition, a landscaping condition attached to these approvals that could require, if there were Gabian baskets, for them to be additionally soil filled and planted for the future. Structurally, there's conditions that require information to be submitted, and it will require the developer to adhere to those issues. Existing structural problems will be addressed by the development, and there is no doubt that the retaining walls at the bottom of the gardens of the residents in Birch Coppice, the wall is leaning and it's in poor condition, but it will be resolved by the proposed developments. In terms of the previous refusal, unfortunately, it's of an age where we've got no electronic records for that refusal, other than the fact that there is a refusal. It was an outline application. That could have been part of the reasoning for a refusal, because unless you have a detailed plan, such as you have with this application, that shows you the distinct design and siting of dwellings, you would be unlikely to approve a development on this site without, I guess, the compelling information and design information required for a positive recommendation to be made. I think that those are probably the points that were raised in the debate. Thank you, Chair.
Yep. Thanks, Pete. Right, members of the committee, would anybody like to make a point or ask a question? I have a hand, but I can't tell who it is, unfortunately.
It's me, Councillor Taylor.
Councillor Taylor, if you'd like to speak.
Right, yes, I think I would indeed. I know this area very, very well as well. I live not far. This land is privately owned, with or without planning permission. This land, surely the owners have a duty to make this retaining wall safe, whether the application is granted or not, which doesn't come through on what the officers are saying. They're only saying that it'll be made good if the application goes through, and that can't be right. Now, going back to the application itself, it's a very small plot. Really, I've got to agree with Brian that I think it's an over application. It's certainly not big enough for 2 bungalows there, because you're taking away the garage site, which will mean more parking, more cars on the road, and it is a very narrow road. On the one side, there's no pavement at all. Although I can see that you're going to put a pavement in there, that's only going to make the site even smaller, and all it's going to do is allow cars to park on it. So the cars are going to go on the road. The lack of privacy is terrible for the people that are going to live behind it, you know, and we've got to give them the same, what's the word there? We should be taking their views into consideration as much as anybody else, and they've got a right to this privacy. So I can't see how we can possibly get two bungalows in there and still, you know, maintain what the officers are saying about the traffic, the amenability for the 2 bungalows. It doesn't sit right with me at all.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Pete, is there anything you'd like to come back on Councillor Taylor's comments? Or are you happy for me to carry on?
Happy to, if you carry on, Chair, and then maybe if I can round up with specific
thanks,
comments
Pete.
afterwards. Thank you.
Councillor Hanif.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Pretty much of the similar opinion as Councillor Taylor in a lot of ways. Notes I've made here are very much listening to everybody. This is the on-road parking. We're throwing out 5-6 people out of garages which are being used. So we need to really look at that before a decision is made. And I think privacy is a very big thing anywhere. So again, we'll be sort of causing a real severe situation here. So I think, Chair, that we should be, before a decision is made here tonight, I think would be, I don't know how we're going to do this with the COVID situation, but I think it needs to be visited by the committee to see for ourselves, whether everything there is viable to, go ahead with. Okay, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hanif. Can I just quickly come in there on the garages? We have to make sure as a committee that we realise we cannot take into consideration the loss of garage. That unfortunately does not come into, it is a non-material consideration when making a decision in committee. Obviously there are other considerations that we can take into consideration, but the loss of garages is out of our control. It's not owned by us. If the person wishes to get rid of those garages tomorrow, they have, they can. So we need to be mindful that we don't fall into the trap of using the garages. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak of the members? Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that obviously Councillor Cottrell thinks that it's worthwhile inspecting the site, and Councillor Hanif's mentioned that as well. So maybe we can't get the right picture in respect to the difference in heights. Maybe members will be reassured if there is an opportunity for them to go down and have a look at the site. I do understand that Councillor Lane Taylor is aware and knows the site, but maybe the other members don't, and that may be an idea. If we can put that forward, please.
Yes, I can put that forward. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak before I put that motion forward? Councillor Taylor.
Can I come back in on a site visit? A site visit, don't forget, if it goes to a site visit, only the people that attend the site visit then will only be able to vote on this. Is that not right?
That's correct, and it would have to be the people from this committee.
That's right. So if we can't get there because of restrictions, then we wouldn't be able to have a voice on that.
This is unfortunately the way that it is at the moment because
Well,
of the COVID restrictions.
A site visit then. Okay then. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Henney.
I just wanted to say on that, Chair, that after 29th of March, as we all know, 6 people can go out at social distance, meet or see something. So we're only looking at what, another 2 weeks? So that should be allowed, at least. I just wanted to bring that up. Okay.
Pete, would you like to come back in?
Yeah.
Were you waiting to come back in? Yeah.
Yes, if I could, Chair. We kind of suspected there may be comments about view. So we've got John on standby with a 3D view that will hopefully give an indication of the levels. Now you can see the site mid slide. You can also see the bank that goes down to the bottom of the gardens. A retaining wall, the Gabian retaining wall, would be a few meters away from the boundary with the residential property gardens at the lower level. So that the Gabian wall or retaining structure would, I guess, support the gardens of the site and give stability to the site. So that's the relationship you can see. You can actually see the rear of number 15 to the right-hand side of the site. That's an existing 2-storey house that will be on a similar plane to the rear of the bungalows. That does give the ability to overlook the properties at the lower level. From the conditions that will be imposed or could be imposed, that would stop direct overlooking from bungalows to the lower level. I think just other comments that came out in the councillors' observations. The structural issues with the existing wall, they are a civil matter, and that would need to be addressed should there be any problems between the owners of the site and any neighbouring properties. The garages are rented. There would be a civil liability to be indemnified. But the garages are rented on an informal basis. There's, I'm told, no contracts or official agreements with the renters. Majority of the renters do pay for 10 weeks in advance in cash, but that informal basis could be terminated, as you'd suggested, without further notice than that. I think just in terms of on-road parking, again, I've previously said that all the properties in the vicinity of Bellevue, they do appear to have more than adequate off-street car parking, as is indicated by the view that you can see in front, Chair. I think that probably shows quite well the relationship of the site with the surroundings. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Committee, are there any other comments that you'd like to make or questions before I put this to a vote? Do you still want me to put forward a site visit, or are you happy with what you have seen?
Chair, sorry.
Is it Councillor Neil or is it Councillor Ahmed who's put the hand up? Sorry, this is really
Councillor Neil.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, Councillor Neil, of one of you.
Yeah, Councillor Neil. Yeah, I think the 3D view is really important. That's cemented my decision. And I think if we have a site visit, it'll exclude some of our members from actually voting. So I think if the members have seen what I've seen on the 3D view, I think it'd be quite easy for them to make their minds up rather than having a site visit.
Thank you for your input, Councillor Neil. Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you. I take note of what Councillor Neil has said. Somewhat I agree, but I think there may be some people that feel more comfortable and may feel that there's a better opportunity to look at the site if it is a site visit. So I think what you need to probably do is put that on a vote as well first, and then see how it goes, and then go to the other one. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Okay, then. So this is for the site visit. So Councillor Ahmed, I take that's for a full, yeah.
Sorry, site visit, yes.
Yeah. Councillor Bradley.
No, Chair.
Councillor Burston.
I'm happy to just go to the vote, Chairman.
Councillor McGoll.
Apologies, this is my first DC meeting, but I do think a site visit is needed. But will I need to attend the site visit, or the person I'm subbing for?
No, you will.
Okay, then, that's fine.
No, that's no worries about it being first. It's a different process. So, Councillor Hanif.
Yeah, I'm of the same opinion that we, at the earliest opportunity, when it's safe, that we go for a site visit. I think we'll explore a lot more that way.
Thank you, Councillor Hanif. Councillor Harley.
I'm happy to go for the vote.
Councillor Neil.
No to a site visit, Chair. I'm happy to go straight to the vote.
Councillor Taylor.
Much as it pains me, I don't want a site visit, and not at this point. So I'm happy to go to the vote.
Okay, thank you. Well, that is straight to the vote. So I am now going to go through you again on your whether you are for or against the application. So planning application P200587, Councillor Ahmed.
I'm not too comfortable without the site visit, so I'm going to say no.
Okay. Councillor Bradley.
Subject to conditions approved, Chair.
Councillor Burston.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor McGow.
Approve.
Councillor Hanif.
I'm against it, Chair.
Councillor Harley.
I approve.
Councillor Neil.
Against, Chair. I'm really concerned about the difference in heights.
Okay, Councillor Taylor.
Totally against. Thank you.
So that is 1, 2, 3, 4.
I think it's down to you, Chair.
I'm a bit uneasy about the land as well, to be fair. But then I also think with safety measures in place, you would not be able to put a building up without those regulations, which So I'm going to have to approve. So the application has been approved. So moving on to the next application, P210015, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. Planning application P210015, which is land adjacent 82 Stourbridge Road in Dudley. This application seeks approval for a detached property to create 2 flats. This application is a resubmission of a previously refused application, which was refused by Planning Committee on the 11th of September 2020. This application varies from the previously refused application in 2 key ways. These are: 1, the extension to number 82 Stourbridge Road for 2 flats has now been removed. And point 2, the roof design of the proposed detached building has now been changed. The proposed detached building would be located to the side of number 1 Marmion Grove in the garden land associated with number 82 Stourbridge Road, albeit this land has now been fenced off. The proposed building would form 2 one-bed flats and have an amenity area and off-road parking. I'm just going to show members some plans and photographs to refresh your memory of the site and show you the current proposals. So this slide shows the red line of the current application site. You'll see here number 82, which is subdivided into 2 flats. This is number 1, Marmion Grove, the application site here outlined in red. This hatched area here shows the proposed location of the new detached building, which would house 2 one-bed flats. And this is the proposed site plan. So this shows the relationship with the proposed building here. Number 1, Marmion Grove, and number 82 and 82A, Stourbridge Road. So this particular photo shows the frontage of 82 Stourbridge Road. And from a bit further back, the corner of Stourbridge Road, Marmion Grove, and number 1 Marmion Grove in the background. A view along Stourbridge Road with Marmion Grove on the left-hand side here. Side view of number 82 from Marmion Grove. And this is a view from the application site towards the back, the rear of 82 Stourbridge Road, and shows 84 there as the adjoining semi. And a view from the side garden of number 82 across towards the rear. And this is the side gable here of 1 Marmion Grove. The building would be located approximately here beyond this fence. And the final slide is of the side flank wall of number 82, which obviously fronts onto Marmion Grove. Just going to flick back to the proposed site plan. There we go. So despite the changes that have been made as part of this new application, officers still do have concerns with the development as currently proposed. The changes that have been made have been very welcomed and are considered to have addressed 2 of the previous reasons for refusal, of which there were 6. However, given this, 4 reasons for refusal still remain, and the 4 key issues are loss of openness to this prominent corner, siting of the detached building forward of the established building line, which means it would be a prominent addition to the street seam, impact on neighbouring occupiers, and insufficient amenity space for future occupiers. So just to elaborate on these points a little bit further, in terms of openness and prominence, you can see the footprint here of the proposed building. And this would be the side 2-storey wall of 82 and the front elevation here of number 1 Marmion Grove. As you can see, this building would sit quite far forward of this building line. There are no other examples in Marmion Grove of development that sits this close to the back edge of the pavement, and therefore we feel it will be prominent and impact on the openness of this corner. In terms of neighbouring occupiers, we do have some concerns in relation to number 84 and the overbearing impact that would have on their garden area, given how close this is proposed to the boundary, and also the impact on 82 and 82A, which is subdivided into flats. This separation distance here is very short, and we would expect that to be at 14 metres and it's 8.5. So the overbearing impact of this proposed building at 2-storey is likely to have a detrimental impact on the occupiers of this property. And our final concern relates to the occupiers, the future occupiers of the new building. They have this amenity space here to the side. It's got a poor relationship with the parking area, but notwithstanding that, it's quite small at 25 square metres, and we would be looking normally for 30 square metres per flat, not just for a single area to be provided. So given this, despite the changes that have been made and welcomed, we still have concerns, and therefore officers are still recommending refusal of the proposed development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Can I call on Miss Patel to speak, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just a few points that I would like to raise. The revised plan still shows the applicant wants to build flats next to 1 Marmion Grove. And this obviously was previously refused on a number of reasons based on your council policies. This new plan again does not meet the criteria of 12 of your council policies. My understanding is that councillors play a role in contributing to developing policy strategies. Therefore, the fact that this application does not meet your policies should be enough grounds to refuse the application. At the last committee meeting, there was a lot of emphasis on parking, which you used Street View, and some implied that you couldn't see a problem with parking. What we must remember is that Street View isn't current and only updated so often. You could tell it wasn't current because it showed Mr. Patel's previous car on his drive that he owned 3 years ago. I appreciate that one of the councillors or council staff member highlighted that the issue isn't just about parking. There are all the other factors why the application should be refused. I note that a revised parking plan was submitted to Highways. However, this still does not resolve the concerns raised about the building next to Mr. Patel's property. I refer my next comment to the applicant, Councillor Zada. Councillor Zada, my understanding is that that as a councillor's role is to improve the quality of life for citizens. However, you have still submitted an application that impacts residents' quality of life. The refusal report clearly states that the proposed building by its scale would result in loss of light, outlook to Mr. Patel and to your tenants, and reduce amenity space. Without going into personal details, Mr. Patel currently is suffering from severe depression and is being monitored. Therefore, this has caused additional ongoing distress to him and created further distress to other residents on the street. Councils have a duty to protect existing residents. Therefore, I appreciate James Helen recommending the application be refused. Without sounding harsh, this appears to be a personal interest and isn't part of Dudley Regeneration. Regarding the comment sheets, I know there are concerns on there which highlight other issues not relevant to this planning, and I will address them separately. However, you can clearly see the issues Marmion Grove is currently experiencing. Therefore, I would urge all councillors to consider your policies in place and refuse this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Patel. Can I now call on Mr. Zada to speak, please?
Thank you very much, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you all this evening. Following feedback from the last committee, which took place in September, what I've done is I've halved the development, and what you see before you is merely 50% of what I brought to the last meeting. I have read the feedback from the residents, and there is not a single item, in my opinion, that can be considered material planning consideration determined by planning law. The responses from the neighbours appear to be coordinated by a single household, which the content of which is similar in nature. Dudley Council also has a policy to promote inner city living, and for these types of development, the requirement is to promote walking and use of cycle. The development is ideal as it is within a stone throw of two of the largest employers within the town centre, which is the hospital and the local authority. The development is within a cul-de-sac with mixed accommodation. No two houses look the same, and therefore developing a street scene is difficult in that context. In fact, the neighbouring property 82, which has been referred to in the slides, is a house divided into 2 flats, exactly what is being proposed in front of you. So how can this be so outrageously different? I know both of the tenants of 82, and neither of them have cars. They both have cycles. The current site is being used as a dumping ground, and I've spent hundreds of pounds clearing up the after effects of what appears to be local neighbourhood rubbish. I want to ensure that this ends. I can no longer allow a convenient rubbish disposal site on my doorstep, and this contradicts the type of person that I am. There is a very long waiting list as well for people with who require 1-bedroom accommodation in Dudley, and as a result, many tenants are paying what is known as bedroom tax to counter that lack of accommodation. This development will provide some additional accommodation which is needed. In summary, Chair, this development is now halved in scale, fits into the characteristics of the area, which is mixed developments, provides adequate parking in a town environment, is currently subject to household rubbish, which is causing blight upon the neighbourhood, and I would like to develop it into accommodation which presents and eases the biggest challenge for the local authority, and I would welcome all of your support in doing so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zada. Helen, would you like to come back on any of the comments made, or are you happy for me to go to the committee?
Thank you, Chair. Not much to come back on, just to say that we totally accept that there's a mixed tenure of house types around the immediate area with flats and houses, and that's not an issue for us. The provision of flats would be acceptable in principle. It very much is the building itself, the built form, the 2-storey location of it, that is the issue that remains for officers. And as previously said, we welcome the reduction in the quantum of development, and that did take the development some steps forward to be more supported. However, it just wasn't quite enough for us to be able to support it, given the fact we've still got quite a large detached building that is very out of character within Marmion Grove. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. So I will hand it over to the committee. Do any members wish to make comment yet? Councillor Neil.
Yeah, good evening. It's a question for Helen. You did say that the proposal would be detrimental to the owners of 82. I'm just wondering if the owners of 82 are the same owners as the owner of the land that we're trying to develop here.
Through you, Chair, yes, the application site and 82 and 82A all fall under the same ownership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor McGowan.
Thanks, Chair. Because I'm new to the committee, I'm probably going to ask some questions that, you probably already covered. But I'm looking through this application and I totally support it. And most of the stuff I'm going to say supports Mr. Zada's comments. I think in the report, you said you can refuse it based on the amenity regarding the parking. But if you look at the proposed plans, I can see adequate amenity for parking there and stuff. And also, shouldn't we be considering encouraging people to use public transport and cycling to work? So I'm just confused where number one's come from. Also, I'm very familiar with the area and stuff, and I think, like the councillor officer says, there is a lot of mixed development there. So I don't know how they would want this particular development to tie in with how the rest of the street looks, because everything's different. And also, I think one of the comments is that this site is subject to fly tipping and stuff. Surely we would recommend that the site is used and adequate housing is provided for people like living in 3-bedroom houses that need 1-bedroom flats, because meetings I've had with officers are crying out for sites for 1-bedroom flats. So I'm totally confused why the recommendation is to refuse this. And we've got council buildings elsewhere where there's no amenities to have parking. So why is there one rule for the council and one rule for people living in the area that want to build? I'm I'm just totally confused where these comments have come from. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen, would you like to reply to that, please?
Through you, Chair. Yes, please. The 4 reasons for refusal on the application, all relating to individual issues that relate firmly back to local planning policy. So the reason behind our inability to support it is firmly hooked on local planning policy that is adopted by ward members. In terms of amenity, yes, there is an amenity area provided, but it is very short of what we would require. And if amenity is proposed as part of a development, we expect it to be up to a required standard. Likewise with the parking, I totally accept about making development sustainable, but we do have an adopted parking standards, again, adopted by full council, that suggests the quantum of parking that should be required for new developments that come forward. So that's why we have that requirement in place. As I said, following Mr. Zarda's comments, we don't have an issue with the provision of flats. There is a mixed tenure around there. The issue we have is the location of the building, so at odds with everything else built form-wise within Marmion Grove, because it is so far forward within the street and very close to the back edge of the pavement. If there was more depth to the plot, we could look at it very differently, but obviously you're very constrained here. You've got the building on 2 very hard boundaries. There's no more space to be able to push it back within the plot, and that is what's resulting in the prominence. And then finally, the fly tipping, I understand that that's an issue for the site, but the issues and concerns that officers have with the development don't outweigh the potential benefit from removing the fly tipping from the land. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Councillor Taylor.
Right, thank you, Chair. Chair, I sat on this the first time round, and I hadn't got a problem with it then, but then I you know, it didn't go through. This application is roughly half the size. I don't know what other application, unless the officers are actually telling this Mr. Zarda that he can't build there, because, you know, nothing that he brings forward is going to sit right from what their point of view and the objections that they're giving. Now, I know in my ward we had years trying to find 1-bedroom accommodations for where we pulled down and had to rehouse the tenants of our 4 high-rise flats, so that we are crying out in this borough for 1-bedroom accommodations. This is a new building. It's adequately got 2 spaces, and it's right by a bus stop, which is just round the corner. I cannot see where there's a problem with allowing this application to go through. It looks like Mr. Zarda's done everything that he possibly can to fit this onto this site, and nothing else is going to fit on that site. This is a piece of ground that is surplus to need. So are we saying that he's just got to lie there empty? Or, you know, are we going to meet this man halfway and advise him on what would go on there? Because has he just got to keep bringing it back and keep getting refused? Because as far as I can see, this is a development that we need, and a development that we should be approving, not objecting to. So that's my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Are there anybody else that wishes to make any comments? Councillor Hanif.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that, yeah, we went through everything last time on this for half an hour or so. I can't, if I can remember. Looking at it again, as it's been said already as well, is that the whole thing is halved now, and surely some of the sort of areas have been taken away now, so it's half of what is required. And my other thing is that the more, I mean, I look at my own ward when I'm in what I'm going to say is that the more plots and little areas are left like that, all it is that they deterred for fly tipping. And I know Helen did say that litter and all that will weigh it all out into what it is, but I'm afraid that's what we get nowadays. And it's a sign of little plot of people go dumping mattresses and household rubbish and stuff like that. So I don't really see a huge problem. So for me, I think I will approve this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hanif. Helen, would you like to come back in on any of the comments on the last two members?
Yeah, thank you through you, Chair. Just to say that yes, we appreciate that it's 50% of quantum of development that was put forward before, and that's why we are in agreement that some of the reasons for refusal have now been addressed. Unfortunately, it's not enough to address all of the concerns that were put forward last time and the application being refused at committee back in September. So yes, we acknowledge the changes, yes, we welcome the changes, but this isn't unfortunately far enough in order for us to be able to recommend approval. And again, yes, it is a piece of land that at the moment is being misused by way of fly tipping, but it needs to be maintained by the landowner, and it doesn't outweigh a poor form of development which is currently recommended that would be incredibly prominent and dominant within the street scene. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. And there are no members I see who wish to make any more comment or ask a question. So I will put this to the vote. So, Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is the one it's a similar to one you just had to face in the last application, had to make that difference and weigh the difference. I see why it's complicated. I also see the points that are made by the applicant and some of the comments made by the Councillor Taylor and Councillor Mughal, weighing the difference of the fly tipping, the need for 1 bedrooms. I think my view would be that goes more towards supporting the application.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it's regrettable. We do really need these type of properties, but there are still 4 material reasons for refusal, and I will have to go with the officers on this one. Refuse, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Burston.
I'm with the officers on refusing it too.
Councillor Mughal.
I think for the reasons I've highlighted, and I think the planning office not really addressed any of the issues, I approve.
Councillor Hanif.
Yeah, I'm going to approve this, Chair. The reasons I've given.
Councillor Harley.
I don't approve.
Councillor Neal.
For me, it's still too far forward, I'm afraid, so I don't approve either.
Councillor Taylor.
For reasons given, I approve this, Chair.
So again, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and yeah, I can see all sides on this. It's a difficult decision, but then I think with 4 material considerations not really addressed, I think it's fantastic that the developer the applicant has looked and tried to get those addressed. There's still only 2 being addressed, so I am going to have to go with the officers on this recommendation and go against the application. So the application has been refused. So moving on to application P210029, please.
Thank you, Chair. Planning application P21 0029, which is Bridgenorth Road in Wollaston. This application seeks retrospective approval for an outside courtyard for a maximum of 30 customers. The application is associated with a recently opened public house for which approval was granted by members at Development Control Committee in January of 2019. Officers are recommending refusal of the proposed courtyard on 2 key grounds. The first being the loss of the garden area for the existing and future occupiers of number 81 Bridgenorth Road, and secondly, the noise impact on the surrounding residential properties. With these reasons in mind, I'd like to share some photos and the plans of the site. So this first slide shows you an aerial view of Kingsbridge Bridge, which is the name of the public house associated with this courtyard area. So the main building is the public house itself. This area here shows the now newly created and retrospective beer garden cum courtyard. And this property here shows number 81, which is a residential property. Previously, its garden ran from the back of the property into King Street, and it has now been converted into the courtyard. So this shows you the area of the courtyard, which is here. Again, previously the rear garden of number 81, and 85 and 83 are the public house. Bridgenorth Road runs to the front here and King Street to the rear. So this photo shows you the public house itself on the corner of Bridgenorth Road and King Street, and this view is looking down King Street, which is residential in the main with a mix of commercial here on the end. This shows number 82 Bridgenorth Road, which is the residential property immediately adjacent to the public house here, of which its garden has been converted into the courtyard. Next to this here is the access road, which serves the veterinary surgery next door. And this is a view along King Street that shows the public house here on the left-hand side. The courtyard beer garden is beyond this wall here. Note the gate. We'll come back to that shortly. And then showing properties on the right-hand side that they are back edge of pavement. And that these here are residential, and in the main they are residential along King Street with the exception of the foot care clinic. So this shows an aerial view of the site itself before the works to the courtyard and beer garden took place. So number 81 is here, a residential family unit with its patio and garden area to the back. And this here is the public house. So as you can see, the rear wall of the public house already abutted the garden area and patio of number 81. So now to show you some pictures of what's happened internally within the courtyard, which is now seeking approval. So this is what's been fitted out. Obviously, it's an external seating area that's associated with the newly formed public house. This is looking towards King Street. So this is the gate that I noted earlier that would step straight out to the pavement of King Street. And this is a detached garage building to the side. This is a view from the courtyard itself back towards the public house, and these doors have been newly created so that people can come out into the courtyard beer garden. And this is a view from the beer garden across towards the back of number 81, which is the residential family home that I pointed out earlier. Note how close the fence is to the back of this property, and that's the bedroom window there. And then this shot shows the fence itself, which now separates number 81 from the courtyard beer garden and the top of a habitable room window. And one final view of the external courtyard. This fence again shows the boundary between the courtyard of the public house and the back of number 81, Bridgenorth Road, which is again the residential property. Just going to go back to the aerial view. So number 81 is the residential dwelling, which is here. And now as a result of this garden being subdivided into the courtyard beer garden, it has a garden area of 10.5 square metres. This is very substandard for a family home, and we consider it to have a detrimental impact on any existing or any future occupiers who should live at this property. And in terms of noise, both number 81 and the residential properties within King Street, shown there, are within very close proximity of the courtyard beer garden area. During the short period when this area did operate in 2020, noise complaints were received to the council in relation to the beer garden area. A noise assessment has been undertaken by the applicant, but this is not being to the satisfaction of the environmental health officers, who do have real concerns that this courtyard may result in a statutory nuisance once in use. This area does turn what was a small bar, as originally approved by committee, into a much more intense use, and the people-generated noise outside the building cannot be expected to be controlled through a management plan in the same way that internal noise could be. And whilst officers firmly understand the needs of the business, they are not considered to outweigh the harm caused by this unacceptable land use in this location. Finally, with regard to the level of objection and support for the application, I just think it's worthy of note that the vast majority of comments that were received in support of the application were not from addresses within the immediate proximity of the development site. However, 8 out of the 10 objections were from properties within King Street or upon Bridge North Road itself. So given all of the above, Chair, we are currently recommending refusal of the retrospective courtyard application associated with the public house. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Can I call on Councillor Barlow, please, to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Hope you can hear me okay. Chair, I'm disappointed this application has been brought to committee tonight. The applicants have worked tirelessly to get their establishment up and running and integrating it into our community. I've supported them from when the original application was brought to committee in January 2019, and that application had conditions attached, and I believe they worked extremely hard to ensure their premises comply with the conditions that were imposed. And therefore I'm surprised that this new application is being refused based on what officers believe to be a flawed noise impact assessment. I'm sure that the siting of the chiller unit, which was one of the factors that was raised, and any perceived noise coming from the site can be addressed. As mentioned in paragraph 35, person-generated noise is a highly subjective and variable sound. And raised noise levels can come from any private residence with loud music and raised voices. Paragraph 36 states there's potential for up to 30 people to be outside. I can't envisage 30 people being outside at any one time, but that's my personal opinion. The applicants want this business to work. And in conclusion, I hope that officers continue to work with the applicants to find a mutually acceptable solution to any noise issues. And I would therefore urge committee members to go against officer recommendation to allow the applicants to get this site right. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Can I now call on Mr. Rogers, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, nice and clear.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, committee. Yes, we live at the top of King Street, literally 7 metres away to our boundary from this beer garden that was implemented without planning. In that short time that it was operating, the noise levels were significant, to the point that we did record the level of noise that was coming from that beer garden, and that was from within our front bedroom with just a small window open. So although Councillor Barlow there, he says they've worked tirelessly with planning to implement the bar, that's fine. The bar isn't the problem. The micro bar, as it was supposed to be, isn't the problem. The fact that they implemented a beer garden with no concern whatsoever from the neighbours without any planning is the problem. And it was our evidence that was passed on to environmental health and to the council that showed the levels of noise and how significant they were. And yes, there probably wasn't even 30 people within that garden area at the time that we was recording this noise level. 30 people competing for you know, competing to speak against each other is significant when you're literally 7-8 meters away from that boundary. So yeah, we strongly object it, and I'm glad to see environmental health have objected it and the council are opposing it. If that beer garden had have been put into the plans when they brought that property next door, they know that that would not have been, the odds are there's no way that would have been agreed if they'd have gone through the proper channels. And so now it's in retrospective, it's the only sensible thing, because it cannot be controlled. You cannot control the noise level from 30 people. You got Graham's place, which is about halfway down King Street, which was there already. We've been here 20 years, and that was already there. And you can hear that from halfway down the road. So pretty much everybody within King Street would hear that, the noise level from that beer garden. So yeah, it's there's no need for it. It's in a conservation area. You know, there's just no place for it to be where it is at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Rogers, thank you. Can I call on Kat Eccles to speak, please?
Thank you, Chair. So Kingsbridge was open for just 8 short weeks before closing due to lockdown restrictions. It was dreamed up by 2 local businessmen, and it has created employment for 7 people, as well as incorporating 2 one-bedroom apartments, providing much needed housing to the local community. This application is for the courtyard, which was previously part of the garden of the adjoining property, number 81 Bridge North Road, and has been purchased by the Kingsbridge owners after the original planning application. The planner's report notes the reduction in private amenity for number 81. However, the current tenant is more than happy with their small garden, and the square meterage is comparable to that of other nearby properties. Kingsbridge have been operating a strict table service only policy in accordance with government guidance, and the owners wish to continue with this way of operating beyond COVID, extending to the outdoor area. The ESH comments that the external seating area will increase the capacity of the pub from 30 to 60, and also incorrectly refers to the establishment as a micro pub, a non-existent term in planning and is not a separate use class. The existing drinks licence and fire assessment allows a capacity of 100, so the number of persons allowed on the premises would remain unchanged, and the owners want to keep this a relaxed and quiet atmosphere and would never wish to reach maximum capacity. ESH also referred to a recording made by a local resident taken on an unknown device from a bedroom window, purporting to record noise from the outdoor seating area. There is no evidence the device is correctly calibrated for noise surveys and is inappropriate to determine a planning application. The owners have taken a number of actions to ensure that noise levels will be managed and kept to low levels. Last orders is called at 10:15 and the doors close at 10:30, well before hours of quiet enjoyment, and a noise management policy is already in place. The owners are also looking at installing an acoustic barrier on the inside of the external wall, which would not be visible from above the wall. The Kingsbridge does not significantly change the character of the area. There's a number of commercial properties nearby, including Aldi, a garden centre, and also Graham's Place. And King Street and its proximity with the centre of Williston should be considered rather than just as a purely residential area. The owners have worked incredibly closely with the planners, the council, and the neighbours to ensure this business can thrive in the future. And they want to continue to work with the community to ensure they become a valuable asset in Williston. And the outdoor space is particularly important given the recent government restrictions on meeting other households indoors, And whilst this situation will change in time, the outdoor space will remain an essential part of the business and a valuable community asset. The proposed change of use will therefore help support an existing business during unprecedented and uncertain times as a result of this pandemic. And the use of the courtyard would result in...
Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Helen, would you like to come back in on any of the comments made by the speakers?
Yes, please, Chair. Through you. In relation to working with the applicants in terms of conditions and noise, that is absolutely correct when it came to the original approval, which granted the public house within the main building. This has been a step change by adding in this external space. So things like the management plan that have been mentioned, yes, that works incredibly well when we can work with indoor space. It doesn't work with indiscriminate people noise, which you get as a result of outside space. So there's just, to be clear there, there's a big difference between what was approved and now what is in place. In terms of the amenity for the current occupiers at 81, I don't dispute that the current occupier is happy with the amount of amenity space available, but our role as planners is to protect future amenity of occupiers who will live there in the future. And as a family home, just over 10 square metres isn't really viable for that particular property, in our opinion. Referring to the issue of a micro pub, it wasn't granted consent as a micro pub, it was granted consent as a public house, so within that use class. So whether it's known as a pub or a micro pub doesn't make any difference in planning terms, so we don't dispute that. And then in terms of the video that was taken and the noise that was recorded, that was incidental to the decision that was made by the environmental health officers. Yes, it was provided and yes, it was useful, but the basis of the decision in relation to noise not being acceptable was not based purely on that video. It was based on a whole suite of information that was submitted, including the basis of the noise survey. So I just want to be clear that the decision hasn't been made based on that one particular video, because it's a very fair point that's been made. We don't know how that was recorded or calibrated. So I just wanted to make that clear. And yes, the outside space, we don't disagree with the fact that would support the business, but unfortunately the harm here to neighbouring residents and to the occupiers of number 81 unfortunately outweighs that in this case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Members of the committee, are there any questions or remarks? Councillor Neil.
Yeah, good evening. Sorry again, Chair. Only me. Another question for Helen. If the owners of the Kingsbridge had actually done this correctly and applied for the planning permission before doing this to the garden, would that then have been granted, or would we be in the same position at this committee?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. It's difficult to say. We have to assess everything on its merits, and we obviously are not aware of what the public view is going to be on it. But I think it would be reasonably safe to say that if the application had come forward with this, we would have raised concerns, because our environmental health colleagues have very strong views on the potential impact and the potential statutory nuisance that this is likely to have, given its proximity. So I do think if I was pushed, if it came in with the application, we would have struggled with this particular element of it in the round, yes.
Thank you, Helen.
Councillor Taylor.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Sadly, the hospitality business has suffered really badly this last year. And I think that we should be doing everything that we possibly can to support any venture within reason to maximise what space they've got. Obviously now, I've read through the pack, this building, the house, is owned by the same people as the bar. Whether it's a micro bar or an ordinary bar really doesn't have any impact on that, except in its present use at this point in time. They don't pander, from what I can read, to a noisy clientele, because they are a specialist pub from the reading of it. So this outside space looks superb to support the business, not as a separate business. so they run in conjunction with each other. And I'm sure that there is something we could do along this wall to lessen the noise that is in a timely fashion, I will say, because the hours of business, this pub shuts at 10:15. Now, how many people, you know, if you had a garden party, that would be acceptable for you to have a garden party till that time. So why on earth are we saying no to this pub? That, you know, I would imagine the outside space is going to be more used during the weekend than during the week, and in nice weather when, you know, many of us are sitting outside in the garden. It doesn't look as if, or reading between the lines, that it's ever going to be full to capacity, because it's not that sort of business. So I'm sure that the officers should be able to come up with a solution to work with this pub to you know, for this to go through. At this point in time, I would say that we need to support all of our hospitality businesses. You know, they've had such a horrible time, and it's not ended, is it? You know, so let's see what we can do for these people.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I can share some of your concerns there, and I think the hospitality industry have took an absolute bashing, but, you know, we can't really compare somebody in their residential garden to a public house garden, because it could be every night. It's not just we're having a bit of a garden party sort of thing, and we do have to take into consideration the noise boundaries with the local residents. But also, I think what we are missing as a committee at the moment is the fact that we are taking a huge section of a household's garden away, and that is not within our, you know, we have certain planning restrictions within Dudley of a certain length with the garden space. So that is another thing that we have to look at. We can't just unfortunately go on the non-material consideration of a person's life.
Can I come back in then, Chair? Because isn't this all owned by the same people? You know, and
if the house was sold, Councillor Taylor, the house would be sold without the garden.
Would be sold with a small garden. You know, so there are many buildings out there. I know to many buildings and many houses that have got a small courtyard, even for that size of a house. This is, I failed to say that this building looks as if it's surrounded by commercial buildings on the one side, and the houses on the other side are on the other side of the road. So there's a full road between them. So
the terraced houses.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I'm not going to say any more. Thank you.
Now, I completely understand where you're coming from, and I am sympathetic towards the company and the business as well. But unfortunately, it's a non-material consideration, and we, as a committee, we have to look at the material considerations. I wish we didn't sometimes, you know, for these sort of things, but that we need to keep on track, sort of thing. That's all. But I do share your concerns. I really do. Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you. Have you been? I'm surprised that you've said everything that I had intended to speak on. So my minds are thinking alike at this moment in time. Definitely, I agree. The hospitality sector has suffered for a long time. They need the support, but here it's at what cost is the question that we as councillors need to make sure that we're asking. One of the biggest caseloads that we all councillors have is the antisocial behaviour. I understand that the business needed support, but we've got to look at, you know, the residents that live in the local vicinity. We've got a number of objectors. They're all from the same area. Definitely, I don't agree that, you know, the noise can be controlled. It can be controlled in a private parties, but when it's a commercial business such as this, you've got people coming from different walks of, you know, life. They have a different view, and when they've had a few drinks, you cannot control those people and you cannot control the noise. So in my view, Mr. Rogers and his concerns that he set out are very valid. and I will therefore be supporting the officers in rejecting this application. Although the sympathies are there for the business, I wish there was other ways to support them, but this would probably not be the right way to support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Hanif.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I know this spot very, very well. A lot of the residents that I lived along there as well. So I know where I'm coming from. And I think definitely there is an issue, there will be an issue of noise, which will not be controlled and it will get out of hands. And all we will be doing is dealing with antisocial behaviour, noise complaints. And I don't think it's fair to the residents, really. I appreciate what's been said around employment, sympathy for the business. We've had this long pandemic, so businesses are struggling. So I share all that, and again, my sympathy towards all that. But the one question I do have is, highways have sort of raised no objections, and what's going through my mind is where that is and how well I know that spot is that you can hardly park there for the residents that live around there. If there are 30, 50 people coming to this, where are they going to park? Even if you look at it across Bridge North Road, it's a main road, the parking is just not there, full stop. So I just want to hear something from Highways on that. Has this been looked into or what?
Thank you, Councillor Hanif. John?
Through you, Chair. Yes, I mean, the capacity was stated of the original approval to be up to 100 persons. The applicant has stated that there's no intention to increase that, and they wouldn't seek to do that as such. We would have to hope that people are sensible and that obviously the consumption of alcohol and driving aren't compatible. So on balance, it was considered that such a small public house or bar area, micro bar, whatever we choose to call it, wouldn't have a significant impact on the public highway. My only concern was any access directly to and from the street, and I was assured that wouldn't take place. It would all be through the front door of the Kingsbridge facility. So that's the position, Chair.
Thank you, John. Are you happy with that, Councillor Hanif?
I'm not actually, no. Having known this spot for the last 50 odd years, I just know that will definitely be parking problems as well as noise. So that's my view, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hanif. Councillor Ahmed, did you want to come back in, or is the hand up from before?
Apologies, there's hand up from before.
No, that's fine. I thought it might have been. So any more? Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just trying to balance this one out because we're having quite a difficult night tonight. Just a couple of questions for Ellen or whoever. How long did the business have a chance to stay open between lockdowns? And were there any noise issues or complaints in that period with the small courtyard?
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Yes, to you, Chair. It was only open for several weeks, is my understanding, between tier restrictions that were set locally and national lockdowns. And yes, during that time, we received complaints both to Environmental Health Section and to our licensing department whilst the beer garden was operational. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Councillor Bradley, did you want to come back in on that, or are you happy?
Yeah, just very quickly, because obviously I'm just looking at in such a small time period with the small courtyard, and there have been complaints. Then with the yeah, I can't envisage that it will be a good move. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Hanif, is your hand still up or did you want to come back in?
No, Chair, it's all hand and all. Oh.
Right, then if we've all finished with comments and, oh, do we have one more? Or is that somebody's hand from before?
Chair, I think Tim Glues wants to come in.
Apologies, sorry, Tim.
That's okay, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. I just thought it would be useful just to do a quick summary for committee why Environmental Health so strongly recommend refusal for this application. First of all, we have to recognise that this is a noise source being brought to this location where there is existing residential. Through no fault of their own, the residents will have a noise source. And the noise source we're really concerned about is people noise. The chill has been mentioned, and yes, that almost certainly can be resolved as a standing piece of plant. It's the people noise that's a problem. My long experience with beer gardens and people noise is that it is absolutely impossible to control people noise. A noise management plan was mentioned, and yes, that has worked for the pub itself as far as we know. But as far as a beer garden is concerned, a noise management plan, the only way to control noise is not to have people in the beer garden. Otherwise, the noise will be a problem. I'm absolutely positive of that. So this application is for the beer garden for seating capacity of 30 customers, but you may have caught that one of the speakers mentioned the building has a capacity of 100 people, and that's on the fire certificate. So there could be 100 people occupying this building and beer garden at any one time, and that could be every day, every night of the week. Fortunately, in this case, it's a retrospective application. Normally, committee wouldn't have the advantage of knowing that noise from the operation that's been proposed here has been recorded. In this instance, we have. Mr. Rogers did record some noise, and I can tell you that the noise consisted of people talking, shouting, laughing, screaming in the beer garden. And it was very audible inside Mr. Rogers' house, in his bedroom, up till whatever time he recorded it. So there was a real impact on that householder. And the two complaints that we received while the beer garden was operating, neither of them were for 81 Bridge North Road. They're both from residential houses in King Street. 7 meters is very close to this kind of noise source, as is the 1 to 3 meters that the windows and doors of 81 Bridge North Road are away from the noise source. That is literally next door to the noise source, right next door to it. So the very close proximity of an uncontrollable noise from people in this beer garden leads us to the reason that we have categorically recommended refusal of this application. There are consequences if the application is approved and we continue to receive noise complaints. We will have to investigate them. There's a statutory duty to do that. And if the officer decides there's a statutory nuisance exists on the residents, then we are legally obliged to serve an abatement notice on the person who's responsible. And the abatement notice will simply say abate the noise nuisance. Now, that will then require the noise nuisance to be abated. And again, the only way I can see that happening is for the beer garden not to operate. So there is a legal consequence as well for other legislation should this beer garden operate and cause a statutory noise nuisance. Okay, Chairman, I think that's all I need to say. I hope that helps.
Yeah, fantastic, Tim. Thank you. Are there any more comments just before we go to the vote? Is everybody happy for heard enough? Yeah. Okay, so Councillor Ahmed.
I'm refusing the application.
Councillor Bradley.
Refuse the application, Chair.
Councillor Burston.
Sympathise with what the owners are doing, but I have to support the officers in refusing the application.
Thank you. Councillor McGaw.
Thanks, Chair. Whilst I agree that hospitality trade has suffered, I do agree with some of the things the members have said, but I have to take into consideration what the environmental report says, so I'm not approving it, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Hanif.
Yeah, I also refuse the application, Chair.
Councillor Harley.
I refuse to.
Councillor Neal.
Yes, I'm going to go with the committee as well and refuse it, I'm afraid, as well.
Councillor Neal? No. Councillor Taylor?
Taking into all considerations, I've still got to approve it. I think the officers could have done more to have worked with this company. I don't think that every avenue has been looked at. So I'm going to go against everybody else, and I would approve this application. Sorry.
All right, thank you very much. So the application has been refused. So moving on to application P20118. Pete.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This application is probably a typical post-industrial site as far as Dudley is concerned. It's seeking the provision of 71 affordable houses, a mix of houses from 1 bedroom to 3 and 4 bedroom houses, and some 2 bedroom apartments on a previously developed site. If you go to the sites, now it's cleared, it's split level. The majority of the sites is single level accessed from Leys Road. The northern part section of the site is probably 5 to 6 meters lower level and abuts the canal. Previously, it was operated by a steel company, and the social club was located at the lower level of the site, with the stepped access between. The lower level of the site gives access onto Crested Avenue and then access onto the canal side. Previously, we had a planning application refused on this site. That was because the previous means of access onto Leys Road didn't incorporate the 3 houses you can see to the southwest corner of the site. Because of the parapet of the bridge over the railway, visibility out of the site predominantly was extremely limited, and no footpath beyond the bridge, and so it was dangerous. The site now has got the inclusion of 3 houses, which enables the access to be drawn further to the east, which now gives the possibility of a safe access. If we could go on to the aerial photos. So this slide shows the existing layout of the site. Say residential predominantly to the east, canal to the north, industrial premises to the west, and some other residential properties to the south. The site has a number of issues which have to be addressed. We've got the industry across the railway, which is a source of noise. We've got sewers that cross the site that preclude any development on the line of those sewers. You've got made ground issues. You've also got the northern part of the site being at a lower level, and potentially issues of previous uses in terms of contamination that need to be addressed. Go to the next slide, please. So this indicates the majority of the site being hard standing, previously covered with buildings, and you can see the tree barrier towards the north, or buffer to the north, that goes then onto a lower level. The former railway to the west of the site runs through quite a deep cutting, and the industrial premises you can see beyond that. One of the premises does have a fan extract from the building that is a cause of noise, and that has been something that's been addressed with the planning authority and the applicants and environmental health as the application has progressed. Okay, next slide, please. Again, the 3D view this time from the north, looking into the site. You can see the lower level area adjacent to the canal. That gives an access link onto Crested Avenue, and it will be laid out as open space with sustainable drainage pond within that area. We think that it's good to have a link in terms of urban design that goes from Leys Road through the site. People in the site can use that link, and they can access the canal side for walks, etc. So this is the existing access from Leys Road. The properties that have been bought to be included with the site and given appropriate access, located behind the tree hedge. If we can go onto the rest of the site. This is the canal side, looking into the site. The towpath's on the other side, but there is a bridge to access the towpath in close proximity to the application site. Okay, next. Crested Avenue, you can see the changes in levels outside the site. The upper part of the site is at a higher level, but there are appropriate separation distances between the new developments and the houses at the low level. Okay, next. And this is an indication of the sizes. It is predominantly hard standing, but trees are revegetating upon the site. Church in the background. We consider no impacts from the developments. Next. And that's the location of an emergency link to the development site. It's an existing access to the site that was previously used, but it will only be formed for use by pedestrians. In an emergency vehicles would be able to get access to the site as well. Okay. Again, general outlook from within the site, and then the next one, please. And that's to the north of the site. There's no habitable windows facing into the site, so that's not an issue. Peripheral trees, any trees that potentially will be lost are of poor health and amenity. So we've got no issues in terms of that. Next one, please. And this is the layout that we've now negotiated and agreed upon. 71 dwellings. As you enter the site from Leys Road, the stretch of dwellings in a terrace, 1 and 2 bedroom houses, predominantly with non-habitable, with all non-habitable accommodation at the rear to ensure that residents aren't affected by the noise from the industrial premises. They've also got a communal garden layout, which is novel, but it will produce a good area of amenity. And some other plots slightly to the north of this terrace have got or will have noise mitigation measures as part of conditions attached to the approval and specified in the pre-committee notes that's been circulated to you. We have an appropriate perimeter block development, good range of house types, and a good amount of public open space to the north of the development site that's accessible through the development site. And I think I would commend the application to members on that basis. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Members of the committee, do you have any comment that you would like to make, or any questions that you would like to fire to Pete? Councillor Neil.
Yeah, good evening, me again. Just looking at the plans, it seems to me to be a good reuse of a brownfield site that at the moment it's laying dormant, it's not being used. So I think this is a really good idea.
Thanks, Councillor Neil. I have to agree. 71 affordable dwellings is quite an achievement to get on a brownfield site. Are there anybody else that would like to make any comments, or is everybody happy to go straight to the vote?
Straight to votes.
Okay, so Councillor Ahmed.
Yeah, fully supportive. And
Councillor Bradley.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Burston.
Approve.
Councillor McGall.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Hanif.
Yeah, fully supported, Chair.
Councillor Harley.
Yes, I approve.
Councillor Neil.
Fully approved, Chair.
And Councillor Taylor.
Approved, Chair.
Thank you. So that application has been approved. And moving on to the final application of the evening, P201545. Helen, over to you, please.
It's Helen with a deep voice this time again.
Sorry, Pete.
It's quite all right, Chair. This is an application for the erection of a 3-bedroomed detached dwelling. I think if we go to the slides, it'll will become apparent. The dwelling is proposed to the side of an existing large house, Bromley House, which would have had a large frontage onto Bromley Lane when it was built, probably in the 1930s. Subsequently, 2 detached dwellings were built on part of its frontage, which you can see on the slide in front of you. The access through the middle of the 2 dwellings serves Bromley House, which has it retains rights of access from Bromley Lane to its site. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so this is an indication of the red light boundary of the proposed dwelling to the north of Bromley House. There's quite a substantial amount of tree planting on boundaries. It's got a large plot. It will link into the existing access from Bromley Lane that is described by rights from Bromley House. Can we go to the next slide, please? And the proposed dwelling, it's of a very traditional design that will fit quite well with the design attributes of Bromley House. It's designed such that there won't be any overlooking of the adjacent properties, and it's well distanced from surrounding dwellings. It has a good amount of amenity space, and I'd say well distant from the newer property onto Bromley Lane. The next slide, please. So this is a view of the access from Bromley Lane to Bromley House and to the new proposed developments. And the next, showing the access towards Bromley House. And the next. So that's the existing Bromley House. The proposed new house will be to the left of that property, as you see. There will be some removal of trees and vegetation, but they're not subject to preservation in this aspect. Okay, the next one. Looking towards the side of the site and where the access will cut through to the new proposed dwelling. And the next, please, which should give the location of the proposed new house will be the setting. It's considered to be appropriate, both in principle. It can't be considered as a backland development. It's merely partnering up with the existing house that was built on significant land, and then later development became apparent on the frontage. Not sure if there's any additional slides now. Okay, just further views of the site of the house. We have no concerns in terms of neighbour amenity. Burrows Road properties are located to the north at a higher level. This is a kind of a hillside site with slopes generally down, so the house will be set at a lower level than properties on Burrows Road. Any more slides? I'm not sure. Okay, just one reference back to the pre-committee notes, which do confirm that initially the tree preservation officer had raised some comments that needed to be addressed. Those comments were addressed and are, I suppose, addressed properly by the conditions 15 to 19 that are proposed for the for any planning approval. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Pete. Committee, do any of the members wish to make any comment or ask any questions to the officer? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Reading the report here, it's one of the objections is the room and the space to turn around a car. If there's nowhere to turn around, does that mean the car's got to reverse all the way back out again? You know, is it not set out so that the parking for this house has been taken into consideration? And I can't see it. Perhaps you can point me to it where it shows, you know, the parking for the new house, please, before I ask anything else.
Okay, if I could, Chair, through you, there's an existing parking area that accommodates 4 vehicles in the frontage of Bromley House. It will be split, so there's accommodation for 2 vehicles for each property in accordance with standards, and I suppose that area will be available for vehicles to turn and exit onto Bromley Lane in a forward gear. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Councillor Taylor, did you want to come back in at all?
Sorry, thank you, Peter. Yes, I'll put myself on mute while he was speaking. Yes, that does cover that concern, because the objection does say parking arrangements, and I just couldn't see where they would fit in there. But as long as people, we're not expecting people to reverse all the way back down there to you know, access the highway, then no, I've got no other objections. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the point of parking and turning, I note Pete said that there will be opportunity available to turn there. Shouldn't that be a condition then, that there would be, because just in case, because obviously if they're sold separately, maybe the owner of the other property won't allow for that turn to take place?
John, do you want to come in on that one?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, so we had a lot of discussions with the applicant on this. Firstly, to clarify, it will be a shared driveway, and although the red line does detail obviously a division of the plot, the applicant has stated that turning would be feasible on that frontage area. However, I have also personally checked on the plot itself, so if the arrow can come across to the new development, there is 4 meters between the existing property and the side wall of the new house. and also 4 metres to the front between the hedge and the front of the property. Parking along that frontage, it has capacity for 2 vehicles in both directions. So theoretically, a single vehicle could be parked towards either right to the side of the property or right at the front of the property, and then fully make a reverse turn manoeuvre so they would exit out onto the driveway in a forward gear. So in respect of turning and parking, we have no worries at all with this new development. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, John. Are there any other comments? Really sorry, guys. I'm finding it hard to pull the list down. Councillor Bradley, is that your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask John, just to give us a few brief words about the access, because the access is quite very narrow, and I'm just wondering what if, say, we have the scenario where 2 cars come back at the same time in opposite directions and they get caught on this lane. Does that mean, would we have any trouble in the future with that?
Through you again, Chair. It's not expected. I mean, obviously, Bromley House is a large established house, and so potentially, multiple cars can be stored there and have access at any one time. So I'm sure at some point in the past, vehicles have met on that driveway. The only pinch point as such is right on the bend to the side of the property there that has limited visibility. As soon as you can see past that point, obviously you can then see to either up to the house or down to the road. So there is adequate space for a vehicle to wait in either direction, so that the conflict shouldn't occur as a head-on incident at all. Obviously, the new property, being set to the side, does have a better direct view down the driveway, and so that conflict level is minimised. So on balance, there potentially could be 4 vehicles, if we say 2 vehicles per property, coming in and out at any one time. But it's not considered to be a major issue, given that it's not a through route or any other form of large vehicle will be expected to access that area. I would think perhaps online delivery vehicles may use to come onto the driveway rather than carrying things, a lengthy distance. But that's typically maybe once a week. So we don't expect a high level of conflict at all on that driveway. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, John. I was also thinking about the possible if there was any potential for reversing back out onto the main road, as it's on a hill as well. But yeah, okay, thank you.
Just to clarify on that point, Councillor, the driveway does widen, and it actually forms sort of a shared access with the adjacent property there. So there is space there for 2 vehicles to pass. So there shouldn't be any need to reverse out wholly onto Bromley Lane. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. So if we are all happy to move to the vote, all those in favour of the officer's recommendation, P201545, Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. I supporting the application. Approved.
Councillor Bradley.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Burston.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor McGall.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Hanif.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Harley.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Neal.
Approved, Chair.
And Councillor Taylor.
I approve, Chair. Thank you.
So the application has been approved. So that is the end of the applications for this evening. So moving on to the last item on the agenda, which is to consider any questions from members to the chair where 2 clear days notice has been given to the monitoring officer.
There are none, Chair.
Thanks, Kim. And here endeth this evening's meeting. Thank you all for your contributions.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.